Okay. So, what does willful defiance look like in the public education system? And, what does it look like for children who can't transition from task to task? And it's just difficult to understand, how important that is in the public education system. But quite frankly, if your children don't transition to the next step, they're kind of like stuck. And I have seen 12th graders reading below grade level and trying to understand just what the offer of faith really was for them because they failed. And I don't know what it feels like to have a student who couldn't make any progress and would get an F. And then no matter how many meetings you had, and even if they're in special education in Sac City, it seemed like the special education system was just not functioning. I know what it looks like to have a functioning IEP where the IEP is really working and students are making progress. But I also know what it looks like to have students on an IEP where it's almost a joke to come to the table and have a conversation about what's happening for your student when there are no measurable gains and no reasonable assurances that your child's going to meet next year's progress levels. So I think that what's happening and what has happened over time is that the district hasn't measured the benefit of the public services that are received through special education, and all of the support has been pushed to the classroom teacher, and the classroom teacher has enough on her hands without handling 25 to 30 kids, and which, all of them learn differently. And some of them need a lot of support, let's put it like that. But once you have a learning and a thriving student, you don't have to slow down. I mean, there's no resistance to that student learning, and the student is engaged, and it becomes a quite pleasant experience. I can say that honestly, that my last child, he enjoyed his high school experience. But I can't even say that I enjoyed my high school experience. It was kind of like chaotic. I remember moving to Sacramento in the 70s, and having the parents protesting outside of Kennedy because they didn't want those students from across the track to come in. And so when my boys attended Kennedy High School, I knew that I needed to be there because I understood the difficulty that was going to be happening. And Miss Matisco, who was the office clerk or secretary, she was still there when my children came through there, and she was there when I was there. And so when she was there and my children came through, I seen her as so to speak, like a guard. She would send information to the welfare office and say a student wasn't going to graduate, and then they could be dropped off their family's income. I mean, her role there was protecting the interests of people who she deemed, I guess, was worthy. And it certainly wasn't on ensuring that all kids had access, because access was not what it was about. I think that I know that my children got a benefit simply because I was there all the time. And they received a basic benefit, but nothing like what my nieces and nephews got when they were in Elk Grove Unified School District, because Elk Grove, when it's not so close to Sac City, has some really good educational services. And the kids do get basic skills. But I can't say that for Sacramento City Unified School District. I can't say that for the majority of students who are in public school system. And the schools are separated by the magnet schools. Does anybody really know what a magnet school is supposed to be about? Well, those magnet schools happened a long time ago, and they happened when they had mandatory desegregation orders. Well, Sacramento just happened to participate in a voluntary process of desegregation. And so that's when they started busting all the kids around. That's when they really realized that the children were income and revenue generators. And so first, I think they started moving special education children into certain school sites to sustain the viability of that school, So even though the children that were generating the additional resources were at the school site, I cannot say that they actually received the services. And so and then they started to create programs within schools. So they had schools within schools. So like Edward Campbell and Cesar Chavez has that bilingual program inside the school. And it's an open enrollment program. So when parents bring their children there, they don't have to be poverty, but that school's 100% poverty. And so that school still gets all the revenue as generated by the neighborhood. And the children there are not poverty children, yet they're benefiting on the services, or so to speak, on the backs of the children who are living in the area. And then when the school district decided to close all those schools, it was amazing how they targeted the highest poverty areas and closed those schools when the district had schools with less than 300 children in attendance. And Edward Kimball and Cesar Chavez, well, that's a K3 and a 4-6. And that school had upwards of 1,200 kids at times in history. 1,200 children on less than a city block. Let's think about what that looks like. Let's feel what that feels like when you have a whole campus of third graders and there's like 500 or 600 of them. Okay. And they have the same level of staff as a school with the 300 kids. They have a principal, they have all those resources. But it's doubly impacted when you have all those children in poverty in one area versus in the more affluent area where they may bus a few children from Edward Kimball and Cesar Chavez. They may bus them over to the more affluent school where the 300 children are. One or two will get the benefit, i.e. magnet. And then, there are different ways. Just like they recently changed the high school academies program. And it was at-risk students in the 9th grade that were lackluster and slow to motivate. And, I tried to get my son in the Justice Academy. And I was told that he was special education and he wouldn't be able to keep up. And so therefore, he was just going to be denied. Not that he didn't graduate at above proficient. Not that he graduated. But he was denied access to that program. And they denied a lot of children access to the resources that they're generating because the district created programs in which they could kind of like control the success. So they have blue ribbon Title I schools. Blue ribbon Title I schools with Title I children. But under those standards, those children came in through the schools through open enrollment. They didn't live in the area. So they're not supporting the children who actually live in the area. They're only supporting the children who are bused there and who happen to be poverty and who happen to document that they have poverty children in that school. But it's still 100% or drop it down to 40% or however they, decide that the base allocation is going to be based on the number of children who attend the school. And, but for the children in the higher poverty areas, well, they didn't even have music. They had so few resources, and understand that their single plans were written by administration, and they really didn't have a lot, and they still don't have a lot of community involvement to help ensure that they're utilizing the resources correctly. And then you have to look at the large numbers. The large numbers where higher poverty kids are attending. And understand, there's a weighted difference there. And so, but this willful defiance issue is still troubling me. It's troubling me because when you understand that the offer of faith is a modification of behavior, and then you're sending your child to school so that they would have a lifetime opportunity of self-sustainability. But it happened so that your kid never could sit down, wasn't prepared to learn, and therefore started getting documented immediately when they came into school. Here in Nevada, they just took care of that right away. They have legislation written at the State Department, legislative initiatives that the teacher and the principal could come together and suspend or expel a student. Think about what that looks like. So here comes a parent with no skills, and she got about 5 or 6 children. And the principal and the teacher can come together and suspend or expel in the first grade. So what would even give that family an opportunity to stay in that educational system? But then if you're not enrolled for so many hours, then they don't have to count your data. I mean, I read so many things that were just amazing to me because it just totally went against the purpose and the intent of the funding. And so, and I'm saying, okay, well, where's the advocacy here? Where is the guidance? And then I looked to find out where can you find a complaint? Just where can you file that complaint in the state of Nevada for the public education system? And guess what? They do not have a process established here that would allow the public to share a concern about how they use the money. That complaint process I was told that I had to go through the state attorney general. Well, to me, it's insanity because I come from a state, although they used to be at the top, are now right along there closer to the bottom. They were at the top at one time, and they had a lot of parent involvement. And during the time when my children were in school, I was involved as a parent. And so therefore, I understand the rules. And if you understand the rules, then you can apply the rules to the benefit of your child. So back to this willful defiance is still looming over me. Transition to task. It was one of the biggest challenges that I had with my son. He needed to get to the next step, but I knew that he could read, but I didn't know how to ensure that he understood that he could read. And there's so many things that kids can look at other kids do and they can't do themselves, and then they act out. But you have to get past that acting out to get to the real learning. And all children can learn. But if you allow your child to be just documented about the small things and no learning be going on, then it's your fault, parent. You have to understand that compensatory education is money that is given to the states to ensure that all children have access. And if you're in poverty, that money is supposed to go to ensure that the support happens for you. Or if you have a child with a disability, that's additional money from the federal government, because then the states are supposed to chip in and pay some money to help support their students. But think about this, in Nevada, they don't have state taxes, and the casinos don't pay taxes. But they have a lot of federally funded jobs here. Lots of jobs in Title I, and lots of jobs that people are getting paid through, Workforce Investment Act money. There are lots of people employed. And then you look at the number of people who are benefiting, and there's little or none. And so when I'm looking at the limited number of children who are actually benefiting, understand that behavior is what public education is all about. And the opportunity to learn is what the compensatory responsibility is. And truancy is real across the nation. But you have to ask yourself again, why are African American children not benefiting? And I'm saying you have to understand what compliance was on the plantation and understand that perhaps we are still living on the plantation. And so in becoming to an enlightenment and understanding that we are all bound by the rules, that it's so critical that we learn the rules and learn how to apply those rules. So, when you have a child that can't transition to the next step, you're going to get a functional behavior analysis or a functional behavior assessment. And go ahead and let them assess to determine if it is something that they can provide additional support for. Because believe me, they can provide additional support for all kinds of behaviors. Because after all, we're talking about the public education system. And I'm telling you, I guarantee you it works. But it doesn't work without you. You're the most important person that can be in the room when it's ensuring that your child has an opportunity to sit at the table and enjoy the meal just like all other children. But you have to first understand that it's going to be your responsibility to ensure that they understand that they're showing up for a purpose. And the purpose is to learn. So I'm going to be getting back to you. I'm going to end this stream. Getting kind of tired, but I was just so full because there's so much to share. And there are only limited opportunities for people to share. But this whole new wave of public education and public resources and the way to reach out and ensure that you can share your life story or your life experience to empower others is critical. And so that's what I'm going to be spending my time doing, is to hopefully enlighten and empower parents who want to ensure that their children have a basic opportunity in life. And I thank you for sharing your time with me. And I look forward to catching up with you soon. So have a good evening. And this is Darlene Anderson signing off. And it's May the 15th, 2019.